Hi, my name is Michael Cooper, and this is our NCHA story. It is a very, very, very long story, very emotional. I'll probably get to crying like a baby here in a minute. I guess I have to go back to when I was 12 years old, the start of it. It's what I hit in my life that was maybe put the fight in me.
My father is a wonderful, kind man. I am 25 years old now, and we worked very hard as a family, and I've not one day ever outworked my father. He is one of a kind.
He is always on 100. My mom too. You can't keep up with them. Like, they're always doing something. Like, we get done working, they're doing something on the farm, they're cleaning stuff. He's doing gas station stuff with all his other businesses. So he's a very hard man to keep up with, let's just say. He's always very energetic. He comes in the morning and it's like ready to go. He's ready for horses to work. He just wants to keep it rolling.
You know, through business and through our industry, you know, you got to find the right people that have the core values, and I put him right at the top of the list against anybody. He'll outwork anybody, whether it's in the horse business or if it's in a business dealing. And if you call him, he's there and he'll give you the shirt off his back. That's just Michael Cooper. Jenny, he probably wouldn't be who he is without her. Boys are great. Everything about the Cooper family, their crew they have here at the ranch, everything's just, I'm a big fan of Michael.
It's hard working for Michael because you always try to prove and work more, but it's hard to work more than him. Like, it's hard to compete. Like, it will be coming at 3 o'clock in the morning here and he'll be already here working. You're like, shit, I'm late. You know, there's no stopping. He doesn't tell you, he shows you the way.
There was 30 days that my mom and dad had a car wreck with me. We were all okay. We had a fire and our house burnt to the ground. Dad come and got me out of my bed. I was just in my t-shirt and underwear, standing out there, and we backed the car out of the carport, and that's all there was. But we had to go live with my grandfather. And then my grandfather prepped me and said, Mommy's gonna end up leaving and she's not gonna be able to come back. She had a disease called Marfan syndrome, and it's where all your organs and your blood vessels and stuff isn't strong enough. And so her main aorta valve, it was in 1986, had split. I don't remember the amount of split, but there was only like a 10% chance that maybe she would make it. Dr. DeBecke in Houston, Texas, was, I believe, 72, and it was experimental surgery is what it was. They pretty much said there's no chance that she's probably gonna come out, and nowadays they can fix it super easy. So they got down there and they had to video it. My mom made me watch the video. I'll never forget it. They cut her all the way, you know, and had to open her up. Like, they don't do that now for all the technology. And so she ended up surviving that. And so it was crazy the way she had to stay down there in the hospital at least 2 months. And like, I was with my grandfather and my dad in high school, my whole time growing up, he never had a job. He had to quit school when he was in 6th grade and go to work for his family. Sorry. The money that we had or didn't have at that time was super, super minimal. Like, when I say poor, we ate deer, rabbit, turkey, squirrel, and we grew all our own vegetables. And when we got ice cream, Mom would cut it in half, and we got so much. I remember getting Miracle Whip at a kid's house. I said, Mom, can we have Miracle Whip? No, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. So, that's the things I'm talking about. Like, when I was 14, my dad was so ill that he put me in the truck and he took me to the town cop. And we was in a small town, 600 people. And he said, we need to go talk to the cop. And I'm thinking that's weird, And I hadn't been in any trouble. I knew that. So when we got there, his name was Lloyd Mitchell. I had been mowing lawns. Dad would just haul me around and I would mow lawns for money because I think my mom had a job nursing, but then when she got sick, she didn't have any money. And then Dad, so it was on Social Security. So I remember when it ended up, I think together it was $700 or $1,200 that they had together. He took me to the cop and he said, Lloyd, he said, I'm too sick. I can't take him to all the spots to mow anymore. And you're gonna have to let him drive the back roads to town and keep mowing. And I'll never forget, he looked over at me like this and he said, and he will not get in trouble. And if he does, you call me, I'll take care of it. There will be no trouble. And so I started taking myself to school at that point, I was a pretty decent athlete in school. And another thing I remember that, like, the things that, I don't know if it scarred me or what it done to me, but in school you have to have all the same tennis shoes. And
for the team.
For the team, right? For the basketball team. So I went home and my parents said, you're not getting them. You can't get them. And they were Converse, I remember. So I said, Mom, how can I do it? She goes, you're gonna have to work and save the money. We ended up getting the shoes. And through the lawn mowing and busting wood, I would bust wood at night. We had coal logs hauled to the place, and Dad's and my brothers, I think, helped me set up a light. And at night, wintertime it gets dark early, so I'd bust wood at night for hours. And I made enough money to get the shoes and stuff. And my brothers, sometimes they lived around us. Of course, they were all older than I was, and they were married and stuff. And so they would sometimes come help me bust wood and stuff like that. And so that's a couple things that I remember. One time my dad, I remember him standing at the front door when I had to go, went on an away game. There wasn't enough time to do anything, so we had to go to the restaurant. He looked in his wallet and he was crying. He started crying, and he handed me. It was before I made money for splitting wood and mowing, and he handed me this $5. And I was standing on the front porch. I'll never forget it. And so he said, son, this is all I have. And so that was basically the part of my growing up. When I was a senior in high school, the only thing I'll add, Jenny and I was dating then, and I had a job from 11 at night to 7 in the morning at fabrication, and it was a factory. And I would work all night. I would come home, take a shower. Mom would have me something to eat, and I would go to school, and I only had to go 4 hours.
You were only like a half a day.
Half a day, and my best friend's mom taught art, and so she knew what I was going through. She knew my family. I went over to their house, and I was like, oh man, they have such nice things, and it was just starstruck. He's still my best friend today, Brett. One of my best friends, Brad Shockley, and she would let me lay my head down, and sleep that first hour. And thankful for her, that was great, because after those 4 hours, I either had to go mow some lawn or do what I had to do, and then I slept and got back up the next day. And it was a lot for a senior kid in high school, and I ended up having a nervous breakdown when I was doing that after so long, I guess, and it was not good, you know. I just broke into, and it was too much, you know. It's those things that you never forget. And when you look at people, it's just like employees today. Anybody that puts out that extra effort and tries to be here on time every day or before time or puts in, I appreciate that so much. Jenny and I both do, because we know how hard it is. We understand, and by golly, it was hard enough. We haven't forgot.
So I started, of course, in Italy with horses, and I was always involved. And I remember in '95 I came for the first time, and we watched the Derby, and I thought it was the coolest things ever. Walking in Will Roger, the lights, the atmosphere, the cows, all my heroes, like it was like mind-blowing. And then I came back in '99, and I think I was walking to Will Roger, and I said, my mom, I would like to come and train. And that's when she was like, if you come and train, I'll come and cook. So that's a little bit of our background in the family. I did come when I was 16, my first summer working for Lindy Birch. And I did every year in the summer of school, you know. Everybody was on vacation, Ibiza, Formentera, Greece. I was coming to Texas and work. But it was the best things. Like, my reality is like we had 15 fresh cows every 2 months at home. We had to look for boots, jeans. It was just every so hard. Here is like the Mecca. You have stores. You go right with every trainer. It's overwhelming. So that's how I got here. And then I worked for Lindy. I worked for Double G. I worked for several people. And one time when I quit Lindy, I barely knew Michael. I knew him because my wife Katie worked for Michael a long time ago. Out of college, it was her first job in Missouri. And he helped me with a 2-year-old I had for a video. It was my very first 2-year-old in the sale, and he had some tips. So that's how we got close. And when I actually came and worked for Michael, I came as a loper. And I got lucky at the right time. One of the main guys who worked for Michael, Nate Lansford, you know, I worked for him for 7-8 years, left. And in the meanwhile, they give me some leftover, I would say leftover 2-year-olds. They were not making the top pack, not the middle pack, they were making the bottom. So, and I got along pretty good. I think Michael maybe saw some potential in me, and he offered me Nate's job as an assistant trainer, and I stayed at Rose Valley for 5 years until he helped me find my first job on my own, which was a great experience. Living there, I was gone for a couple of years, 3 years, until last year I felt like I was doing my own things, but I wasn't exposed to showing, and I wasn't in the light I wanted to be. Because in Weatherford, I mean, here it's tough. You gotta always be in the heat in order for people to know you're there, send you horses. And so right before the Super Stakes, we got to talk a little bit, and I guess timing again was right. One of his guys was leaving, which was the guy who replaced me when I left. So we just switched again, and I gotta say, probably was my best decision for me, because after that I got show, and I show a lot. Got really lucky at the Derby. I showed some good horses, made 4 in the finals at the Bash. So everything was doing pretty well. I'm pretty happy. I feel like I'm growing again as a trainer, as a showman, as a person.
It's really hard to put it in words. Where we come from back in Missouri is, you can't even describe it. It's one of those things where you see somebody and they tell you their life story, and like you're like, oh well, like great job, but to live it is another thing. People don't understand where he actually come from being back in the little red barn where he used to train out of, or even the horses that he used to train. It's incredible even to me, knowing that I was even there and a part of it, but it still almost seems surreal, and that it was even possible, or even that he accomplished what he accomplished.
A big part of this deal that I don't need to forget is that when I was roughly 14 to 15, I had two vacations my whole life. One was to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, I remember that, and one of them we got to go to Arkansas to my cousin's. He was working at a ranch, and so I don't know why we went there. His name was Dale Linder. If it wasn't for my grandfather, I wouldn't be doing horses. Now, we never had any registered horses. They were all grade horses. So we went there, and he said, hey, you want to ride a cutting horse? I said, oh, I'd love to, because you're thinking about a kid that, rode trails and rode some fun days at $1 entry fee for club shows, horse shows, barrel racing and pole bending and stuff like that. So we went to the pasture. I'll never forget this. We gathered, it seemed like 150 cows to me. It might have been 30. I don't know, but it seemed like, oh my goodness, I was starstruck. Like, I was super starstruck. And so we went in there, and I could ride a horse. I didn't know anything, you know what I mean? And so we pulled horses out of the stalls, and I got to ride like 2 to 3 cutting horses that day. And it was the greatest day of my life. Like, I'll never forget it. Like, it was unbelievable. We come back home, and I was 14, 15, never really, when they asked me, a senior in high school, what do you want to be? I said a horse trainer, you know. I simply loved, I grew up, I guess it's like a squirrel dog or a rabbit dog. They're going to run rabbits or squirrels. I was born to love horses. And so Jenny and I got married in 95.
Mm-hmm.
So we had those 2 jobs, and we moved back from there. And I'll never forget, I was making decent money enough to buy, I remember a Chevy, my very first Chevy truck. It was a 1996 truck, because we graduated in 94. And so it was like 2 or 3 years old. And so her dad was a big mentor to me as far as pushing me all the time, because my dad wouldn't push me, because you don't want to be in debt, don't want to do that, and don't do any of that stuff. Well, I had a father-in-law that was just the opposite. Let's buy the biggest farm. Let's do this. Like, he was a huge dreamer. And they had a ranch there that was 300 acres.
I moved from Florida, and then I moved from Florida to Missouri when I was 13, and so didn't know a thing about horses. Loved them, but my parents, my dad was a World War II vet, and my mom was a nurse, and so I was a oops baby, if you will. Older generation parents. You know, everybody thought they were my grandparents growing up and everything. And so we get to Missouri, and my dad and mom wanted to raise me on a farm, like my half siblings. So that's kind of where like the farm life, the country life got introduced to me. And it's very ironic, because the first horse my parents bought me was like out of a sale barn, just a rat tail Appaloosa, like butt ugly, if you will, like, you know. But the funniest thing is, I didn't even know Michael yet, but I named him Cooper, like the horse Cooper. And so, kind of funny just how things work out.
Michael Emmett Cooper. Jennifer Lynn Mitchell.
After we graduated, I had a scholarship to go play ball, and I ended up hurting my knee real bad. Tore some stuff up in there and never really got it fixed because we didn't have insurance and all that kind of stuff. So after Jenny and I come back from there, I got a job landscaping in town, and she got a job at the...
At that time, I was working, it was called Pine View, and it was a group home for like the physically and mentally disabled. And so
I was making $12 an hour then, and that was in 98, 99, something like that. That was a lot, like a lot, and it was hard work, real hard work, but it was a good work. And my father-in-law happened to talk to one of the neighbors, and he said, "Yeah, I would sell that piece of ground over there." Well, my father-in-law, I was driving just pretty good truck, you know. I was so excited about that truck. I just had it maybe not even a year, I don't think.
It wasn't even a year, I don't believe.
And he said, "Tell you what, why don't you go talk to that guy about owner financing and buying that land?" "I can't afford that," I said. And he goes, "Well, how do you know until you ask? And how do you do this and that?" And I was like, okay. And he just kept pushing me, prodding me. And I went and talked to him. He gave me the stipulations, and I said, "Man, I can't afford it." He said, "I tell you what I would do. I'd sell that nice truck you got out there and drive something else, get something that was paid for." He said, "How much that payment on the truck?" I don't remember what it was, but it was almost what I could pay for that land. And I was like, holy moly, this makes sense. Like, the old man's right. Like, he's been around, you know? And so I talked to my grandfather, and he had an old 1979 truck over there that was horrible. Flatbed. He goes, "I'll give you that truck if you want to rebuild the motor and put a bed on it." It had one orange door in the middle, and it was gray all over. And it had my other brother helped me build a flatbed. Don Cooper helped me build a flatbed out of just cull lumber. So I did what he said. I took that truck, turned it back in, and we ended up making a deal on that land.
We owner financed it.
We owner financed it through that. And the stipulation was if I ever got 60 days behind, he got to take the whole piece of property back. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man.
We had our little back in the day, like banks, they had your little pamphlet book that you had your payments, and we were like the dot.
It was $311.21 is what that payment was. And you know why we know how much it was. It was hard. It was hard to make.
Like, we thought that thing, every time we opened it, we were like counting the payments.
Yeah. And so I took that truck, traded in, got this old beat up truck that you were embarrassed to drive. You're embarrassed to pull up in it. And my dad said, "Hey, so-and-so's selling the trailer. What about if you looked at it?" And I said, "Dad, I don't know if we can make it all work, you know?" And I said, "I don't know if I have enough money to drill the well and do whatever." And he said, "Well, go look at that trailer." And it was down there as a little 14 by 60 2-bedroom trailer. And so we went and looked at it, and we end up, what we were paying in rent was $150, and the payment was going to be $137.43. And I even forgot those numbers. You can check them out today. They're real numbers. And so I could own the trailer, and the trailer cost $4,500. It cost $4,500. Well, we had enough money. We went to the bank. We got that done. And I still had to drill a well, and I still had to get the trailer moved. So when you talk about a small country hick town, my Uncle Doyle had 100 and some horsepower tractor, and we ended up pulling it across town. We had to go right through the middle of the square to...
My brand new home was coming. Right.
And it wasn't a brand new home.
No, it wasn't.
But it was
to me,
to
it
us.
was. Yeah.
We got to live on the place, and so anyways, years after that, we worked there. Jennifer worked there, and then I kept hauling cordwood and stuff for extra money and whatever I could do, and any horse I could break. We didn't have a barn yet, so we ended up having a barn. When I say a barn, like a real cheap, like $7,500 pole barn, you know. A little different than this barn we have now.
Well, in his defense, though, like he would build it with what we like the money that we had saved, and then that's what we got.
Because we didn't have enough equity, or I didn't have anybody to sign for me to do that. And when Jenny and I was married, we were, I think it was a year or 2 years after we married, we got to go out and eat. And never had a steak before. I never had a steak. And I don't know why we were having this steak, why we did it. And the guy said, "How do you want it fixed?" And I said, "Cook it." And he's like, "Yeah, how do you want it cooked?" "I don't know, done." And he said, "Well done?" I said, "Yeah," because I didn't know. And so, I mean, literally, I just didn't know. We started breaking some horses. And so we end up getting this barn, and I ended up taking horses to break. Well, word got out, and so we were landscaping. Jennifer was working there. So what we would do is Jennifer would get up, because I had to leave like at 5 o'clock in the morning. So Jennifer would get up. Well, Lane was born in 1998, so we not forget about him. He was born in the barn, not really, but he was pretty much
raised in the barn.
Drug around. Yeah. He was. I got a picture of him on a horse at 4 days old. That's how stupid and young we was. I would leave early of a morning. Jennifer would go feed everything at the barn, and then she would come back, get Lane and Lance, or Lane ready
Lane
at the time,
we had
or
a
whatever.
Lance
Lance was born in 2000. So she would go to work, take him to my mom's or wherever, babysitter or mom's. Then she would go to work. She would come back home, most of the time beat me back home. And then she'd either have horses saddled, be mowing the yard, be cleaning all the stalls and doing all that. She's the biggest part of my success. Bar none, the biggest part. No question about it.
Like the old country song, every good man, there's always a good woman, and it's Jenny Cooper. Michael would not be who he is, the boys. It all goes back to she's the rock of the whole family. If it wasn't for Jenny and filming every horse before the show, after and the story about Michael and Jenny when they first got started, when they had nothing in Missouri. He didn't even get on a cutting horse till he was 23 years old, I think. But the old VCR tapes, she'd film every time he had a run in middle of nowhere, Missouri, and he'd go home and they'd sit together and rerun those videos over and over so he could work on. No one really taught Michael how to train or show a cutting horse. It was all self-taught.
It's incredible. I've never seen two people work so hard together, and including my mother too. I mean, you got to give her just as much credit as you gave him, because he couldn't have done it without her. It's incredible to really see where he come from.
So 10 days before she had Lane, she cleaned 10 stalls and mowed the yard with a push mower. 10 days before she went into labor. So there was no stopping. It was her and I, and she was behind me and beside me and in front of me or wherever I needed her to be at, to where we could get wherever these two kids knew they were going. Her and I built this from the ground up. Her dad and mom didn't have any money. My mom didn't have any money. I had 2 customers that was a huge role back in Missouri to break me in and get me to where I'm at today. We started breaking horses, and then people would send horses, and I wanted to put them on a cow. They wasn't paying me. I'd get any neighbor's cows. We bought 80 acres there. And so I wanted to put them on a cow. I just wanted to work a cow, you know? I'm sure it's because I rode those horses and my brother and I started team penning there. And my brother Jeff, he's the one that taught me how to drive, took me to the play day horse shows. He was basically my dad, because my dad couldn't take me hunting. He couldn't take me fishing, you know, because he was too ill. He was just literally too ill. He had 7, 8 heart attacks, and he just couldn't do it. He had diabetes, and just all the stuff. You know, he was a great dad, a loving father, but just didn't have the health to continue because he had to go to work at such a young age. And so anyways, we started breaking horses, and the word got out. We started training. One thing led to another. One guy that was sending me a horse said, "Hey, you need an indoor barn." I said, "Yes, sir, but I can't afford it." He said, "I tell you what, why don't I write you a check for that barn? How much will it cost?" "I don't know." He said, "Well, why don't you go do the figures, talk to somebody, let me know." So I found out. So he knew that if I had that barn, that we would be able to fill it up somehow, or trusting in 2 little kids that just had heart and guts. And so he gave me that check. It was $7,500 to build a 60 by 60 with lean-tos on each side. That's pretty cheap back then. And we did a lot of the work ourselves. We did a lot of the inside work ourselves. And so anyways, we did that, and pretty soon more horses kept coming, you know? You know, they say that comment, build it and they will come. And it kept happening. And so what would happen is the same procedure. When I got home at night, Jennifer would have everything ready, but the more horses, I couldn't get in bed till 10, 12, 1 o'clock some mornings. The only time I would go is Lane, the trailer was setting up there, and she could see, she would step out the back of the house. She'd say, "Michael." And I'd get to her where I could see up there, "Yeah, you're gonna have to come rock Lane. He will not go to sleep." So it might be anywhere from, I don't know, 9. We never had no set schedule for our kids.
Right,
They
yeah.
went to bed when we wasn't very good. We were just kids ourselves.
Yeah,
we were just 22 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would go up there and I'd sit in the chair and I'd rock him, and within minutes, I don't know why, but he'd go to sleep. And I might fall asleep with him. She'd have to wake me up, and I'd have to go finish at the barn. And so it just got very, very tough on me and her both. Like, it got really tough. And so it come to the point where I just kept wanting to do more horses. And we were making a fair amount of money. We were charging $300 per horse then. And so, but it was still a lot, you know? And so I was landscaping, doing that, and she was making her money. I used to buy sale barn horses and try to trade them and do whatever I could do to make a buck. And so we were doing all that, and I said, "Man, I really want to just train horses. She goes, "Well, we'll try it." And so we did that. My boss got mad at me. Several other people said I was the most stupidest thing I could do. Why would you quit a job like that? He said, "I thought I'll never forget it. I don't care if he's sitting right here." He said, I thought you were a lot smarter than that. I can't believe you would just stop a job like this. I'll end up giving you the business someday. And I'm sure he thought it was right at the time, you know, because to be a horse trainer in Summersville, Missouri, to go out on your own was not very smart. I mean, I would never recommend that for somebody today. And so I did that, and it was tough.
We ate a lot of egg sandwiches.
We ate a lot of eggs.
Egg sandwiches.
And it's the honest to God truth. We just kept riding, and a guy named Joe Davis sent us some horses, and huge part in my career. Him and George Ward were a huge part of my career. I rode 2-year-olds for Joe West Davis, and he sent the 2-year-olds all there one year, and he kept one of them, and he said, I want you to train that one. I was like, oh man, yes. And it was the worst one, of course, you know, and it was a yellow Palomino horse, and it was horrible. So
horrible.
He was horrible. And so I called him halfway through his 3-year-old year, and I said, Mr. Joe, this horse isn't very good. And he's on the phone, and he says, he's your only horse, get him trained. I'm like, yes sir, I'll do it. And he was like a father figure to me in the NCHA, because he knew everything in the NCHA. He had been with Barbara Schulte and all those other trainers that was, you know, he'd been doing it forever, knew all about it. And so he was my mentor idol, you know. And so I called him again in August of his 3-year-old year. I said, Mr. Joe, this horse is not doing very well. I just don't want to waste your money. You know, he's not what kind of, like, to me, Joe West Davis has great horses, you know. And so I said that to him, and he's on the other end of the phone, and he said, son, I guess you didn't understand our last conversation. He goes, he's your only horse. Figure out how to get him trained. Yes, sir. So I hung up the phone. And so I went to the Iowa Futurity. That was my big deal, you know. I went to the Iowa Futurity, and the girl that worked for me was Angela Ball at the time, and I'll never forget. She said, how are you going to get that horse showed? I worked him 4 times before the day I left. I was like, I have no clue. I went up there, and I was 3rd on that horse. Ended up 3rd on that horse in the Futurity there. And so he ended up showing him in some non-pros, and he won 2 championships in the non-pros. So that was the relationship that very first started one of our relationships in the cutting, you know, pen. And so anyways, there's a guy called that was working on our place, and he said, hey, my cousin has a bunch of horses. I told him that you ride horses and you do a good job. Would you take some horses? You bet. I would take anything anybody called with, because I didn't know. And to put another note out there, I would take horses and not call other trainers, because I didn't even know it was proper. If somebody called want me to take a horse, I just said yes. And so I kind of got on the wrong foot with some people, because I didn't know the etiquette that was proper. I was just wanting to make money and ride a horse. I didn't know. I just literally didn't know. So I had to train my sons. I had to teach my sons and train them a lot different, and say, hey, you need to call the other trainer. You need to talk to them. And so it was a mistake that I didn't know I was making, you know, throughout the thing, because you need to figure out why it's happening, what's happening in the story. And so he sent me like 3 or 5 horses, like best horses, you know, some of the best horses I had and everything. So he called me one day. He goes, how's those horses doing? So I think they're doing pretty good. He goes, you want to show that one at the NCHA Futurity? I was like, yes. And I'd watched a little bit of it and everything. I learned how to cut and train horses. There was a couple videos, Roger Wagner, Hip to Be Square, and Matt Gaines and Paul. I got to watch those videos, and that's basically how I got to learn. Well, Jerry Hampton was another big part of my
Your
career,
start,
my
probably,
start.
yeah.
I just happened to be at a coat work with this mare or at another coat work right there by our house, somewhere in between there and Springfield, Missouri, and got to talk to him. He said, "Come up to the house." And so he had a lot of horses at that time, and I got to riding with him, and he showed me some stuff and let me come up there and work, because I either had some buffalo or some cattle. I didn't have a lot of inventory to train horses on. I went to the Futurity that year. I rode down there with Larry Bilo as a loper and a stall cleaner, and
And gonna show your horse.
And gonna show my horse. And so I did that, and I marked a 14.5 on the first round on my horse. I was like, yeah. And only one other trainer made it back out of our group. And it was like, I think I done good. I was just so green. The first shirt I wore was a yellow shirt down there because I only had 3 shirts. I didn't even know everybody's laughing at the kid that had the yellow shirt on, with the bat wings, and whatever. And so I went in the next round, and her name was RC Little Pep. I'll never forget this horse till the day I die, I don't think. But went in the next round, I marked a 13.5. At that time, a 28, 27 would go. And they said, I didn't make the semifinals, but I made the John Deere finals. They said, "Hey, you're going to make the John Deere finals." I'm like, yes. And they said, "Hey, we can't find you. Did you enter the John Deere final or the John Deere limited rider or whatever?" I don't know. I mean, I literally didn't know anything. And so come to find out, the owner didn't enter him because I didn't tell him, and I didn't know, or I would have made the John Deere finals. And so Jenny and I started our career in the cutting at that time, just about, and we started cutting, and those guys all helped me up there. All the trainers up there give me bits and pieces. Larry Bilo, Jerry Hampton, Donnie O'Brien, all them guys. I'm probably leaving somebody out, but we just kept cutting, and when we could, we'd go to those small shows up there. Galen Wells, he used to live up there at Kansas City, and he come a big part of our life, our family, and he taught me how to show, taught me how to watch cows, literally taught me a lot about the show pen. Not about training horses, but the show pen, how to show a horse and how to watch cattle. And I got to catch ride a few horses at the weekend shows for him, because he had a lot of horses at that time. And that was pretty phenomenal for us. At that time, my mom called me one day, and she said, "Son, do you know a guy named Kenneth Gallion?" And I said, "Oh, yes, ma'am. He's here at this cutting at Carthage, Missouri." And she goes, "Well, do you know that time we took that vacation, that was that guy's name at that ranch?" I go, "Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh." And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, because Mr. Kenneth was not home at that ranch when we got all them cutting horses out and at the stall, and we rode all those. I was just with my cousin, and I was like, oh no. And it was so long. I said, "Mr. Kenneth, I've got something to tell you. I've got a little confession." "What's that, Michael?" He was, I love Mr. Kenneth, and Jody and Bo and Wesley, all of them. But I said, "Well, you know Dale Linder?" He goes, "Yeah, he worked for me for 14 years. I said, "Yeah, he's my cousin." "Well, I didn't know that." And I said, "Well, I've got a little confession to tell you here." I said, back in, when he worked for you, I come to your ranch." He said, "You did?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "But I guess you were gone to a show." And I said, "You're the reason I'm here at this cutting today." He goes, "Why is that?" I said, "Because him and I pulled a bunch of horses out of the stalls, and we just cut and cut and cut." And he goes, "I'll be doggone." So it could have been Smart Little Lean instead of putting in the stall. I don't know. I don't know what horses. All I remember is there's one bay horse with a blazed face. So that was my story, how I got my first ride on a cutting horse. And I'll just tell you, an old man told me he was 92 years old. It's just kind of a funny saying. He said, son, let me tell you about these cutting horses. They're the best thrill you'll ever have with your pants on. And I was like, oh no. I was so embarrassed when he told me. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he's right. I never forgot it. When I rode that cutting horse, it was magic. Something underneath you like that. You had your hand down. It was so exciting. It was especially for a kid that rode non-registered horses, and when you got on the horsepower of a race car going around that track and the adrenaline pumping, and when you put down your hand and this horse magically went right and left and worked that cow, I was like, how's this happen? A kid, I didn't know. I was like, how's this happen? How do you train a horse to do this? We just kept cutting and kept going. We had a pretty good clientele built up.
And this is before like social media, like we didn't advertise.
Yeah.
Like it was just like this person would talk to this person. So we were very blessed that we didn't have any extra. We didn't put ads in the paper. I mean, we didn't do anything. So it was literally just word of mouth, and so that was
God,
yeah,
family, and relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships is what you build everything around. To me, relationships. And I think if you'll ask my boys what the number one rule is in our house is you treat people how you want to be treated. It's pretty simple. That rule right there, it covers the relationship part.
He always has a golden rule: do unto others as you want done to yourself. Dad has always taught us lots of lessons, whether it be life lessons, business lessons, or even stuff about horses.
I met Michael. I'm originally from Kansas City. Michael was in Missouri. I met him through the NCHA years ago in Missouri. And then he actually moved to Overland Park, Kansas, Leawood, Kansas, to work for a guy named Daryl Rodrock. Daryl, he was in Kansas City. That's where I was from. That's where one of my main offices is from. When he went to work for Daryl, it was interesting. Our relationship even got stronger. Daryl Rodrock was a great man. He was my high school teacher, of all things. So Daryl and I go way back, and that goes back into Michael and I built that relationship.
In 2009, we get a call from Daryl Rodrock.
Well, by this time we've got Lane and Lance still in Missouri. We hadn't went to Kansas yet, but like they were raised in a barn. I mean, no shoes, no socks, just little boys, and we had the Johnny jump like in the doorway of the barn that would entertain one. The playpen over here would entertain the other. You'll laugh, but like at the time we had a manual walker that we would strap them in there and just let them, swing themselves at times where I would be out feeding horses or whatever. But yeah, they
grew up on a horse, both of them. Lane still holds the world record in the Coliseum today. And he's a very, very good roper. He is he's just started back cutting. He kind of left that for a while, and he's a real estate man. And then Lance, I mean, you guys know what Lance have done, and I'm very super proud of him also, and how he's become and how he's doing with the customers and horses and everything like that. So,
and a lot of credit goes to, like Michael said, Galen gifted Lane an older gelding that he kind of got acclimated in the show pen, and
because we couldn't afford one for him.
And then Kara Brewer, she always mounted Lance and Lane with great horses, and so they, she always made sure that they were on wonderful geldings. And at times a couple mares.
Some of her best horses.
Yeah.
She
so
was
a lot
amazing.
of their success at a young age, I would attribute to Kara just making sure. Galen, Mr. Joe, Mr. George, obviously, but Kara was always right there making sure that they were mounted.
My first Futurity finals was in 2007. A funny story there is, for some reason, I guess we had a little connection with Matt Gaines, and he's definitely my idol still today, right? He invited me out to his ranch to work horses at Weatherford before the finals. I'm like, oh, yes, yes. So I went out there and worked 2 or 3 times, and here Matt is stopping them and making them wait and doing all this, you know. It's like, I'm gonna do just that, because I was like this. Every horse, Matt was working like 7, 8, 10 horses or whatever he was working, because he had lots of horses. I was like, I'm gonna go do that same thing he's doing. I'll do that. So Futurity finals night, I got out there, put my hand down, my horse ran over there, stopped, and goes,
Doesn't
never
turn
turn.
around.
And I was like,
around.
I missed something Matt was doing.
Longest 2 minutes and 30 seconds of your life.
So that was my first Futurity, and I was like, oh, I definitely got to talk to Matt, because I missed something. I really missed something. And so after that, my next Futurity finals was 2009. 2009, Daryl Rodrock had called us about going to work for him. And Jenny and I went up to talk to him. But first he called me and he said, I said no. I was scared to leave town still, or my place and family or anything else. And he goes, how can you say no when you don't even know the terms? And so he talked about the terms and stuff like that. And he said, I think you should come talk to me. So we drove up there and talked to him and everything. Come back home, we talked about it. And we ended up taking the job. It was a 5-year contract. So in 2009, on his horse, Yada Cat, we were reserved. Jenny wasn't even there.
That is Yada Cat. Yada Cat is by Highbrow Cat and out of Rio CD. Yada Yada Yada. It's that that mare is by Cediolina, and this horse is ridden by Michael Cooper, and it belongs to some of our new members. They've been in this for about 4 or 5 years now. Daryl and Karen Rodrock, and they're from up there in Kansas. And this boy Michael started working for him full time. And boy Daryl, he says, I want to go out being a winner on coach.
We lived in Kansas, and at the time, the boys were going to be in a Christmas play at church. Well, I didn't get my dates right. Futurity finals night, I'm sitting in a church pew at this church watching Lane and Lance be Joseph and an angel, or whatever. And we didn't have like PHC where you could watch it on your phone. Like you either got a text message on the score.
He stepped up
Start out good here. He's asking it now. He's getting it on now. Boy, he's having some good work on this one. This horse is really accurate, stopping good. He needs to clear that herd with about 25 seconds. He's got 28 now. He needs to get on up there and do something.
And a young man that worked for us, Nate Lansford, texted me and said, hey, Michael just showed.
This cow needs to be good. Keep that cow on him, boys. Stay right with him. Stay right with him. He can handle it. Come on down in here. Stay with him. Now he's working on it.
There we go.
Now he's doing it. Come on,
Nice.
Michael.
Very nice.
Come on, Michael. Stay with him. Come on. There you go. There you go.
5 seconds.
Come on, Michael. Looking good. Looking real good. Pretty good there, Ken.
That was outstanding at the end, Chubby. Hard.
That's the way to finish a run, right? 26. Woo! Well,
And marked the 26. And I went, like during the Christmas play, okay, I went, yes, like that. And the lady beside me, it's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I think my husband just might have won a really big horse show.
Get up and walk out or something.
No. Well, then Lane sees me and Lance sees me up on the stage, and I went 2, 2, 6, like that. And then they're like, so literally in the middle of the Christmas play, Joseph and the angel walk off the stage. And so I'm like trying to get up, excuse me, I want to talk to my husband. So I'm trying to make my way out. Lance and Lane are like, we want to talk to Dad, And so, yeah, so lesson learned, never be without your husband showing on
I
fraternity
don't think
night.
they thought
So,
I was going to market a good score.
Yeah, so that was quite.
And then, anyways, that night, Shelly Mallory,
yeah.
she was there, and she goes, stay here. You're going to win the fraternity. I need to interview you in a minute, blah, 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 blah. I said, ma'am, there's a lot of cutting left. She goes, no, I've been doing this a long time. Tony Piggott goes in the next horse after me, or the next horse marks 229, and they don't even know my name. He's riding a catch ride for Double G, and I end up reserve, but it was funny how it was like, and so from that moment on, you never think you're gonna win anything. You just, if you win, it's great, because it's so hard to win. I go to work for Daryl Rodrock, and his health gets bad. He teaches me a lot about people, about how to talk to people. He taught me a lot of that stuff that was very beneficial in my line of work. And he's like, I don't have long to do this. He said, I want to do it. I want to buy horses. I want to ride the best horses, blah, 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 And so he didn't have long to do it. And he called me in there and said, hey, I can't do it. He some days he would say he's going to come out and practice, and he couldn't make it, anyways, he tells me, he goes, I'm going to severance you out. And he treated me so good. And
Our
my
whole family.
And
Like,
him
yeah.
today, him and my oldest son, Lane, are super, super close.
Mm-hmm.
And we all are. We love him. Like, he's great. I work for two of the best guys I could ever work for. And I don't like working for anybody. Even from a kid, I've always worked for myself. And we've always had our own business. So anyways, I make some calls, and I'm gonna go back home. I'm gonna build a big barn. At that time, we had a lot of clients, and Daryl was so gracious. He understood. So I sold, in 2009, I was reserve. In 2010, I hurt my knee again, because remember, I never got it fixed. And so I hurt my knee real bad again when I got up from the bash at the table here, and I ripped my ACL. I had no ACL, ripped my meniscus. It's a total reconstruction. I'm out. And this is September, right before I'm ready to show at the Futurity. And so we send those horses to Steve Olaf and Dirk Blakesley, and they make the finals on both my horses, which was unbelievable. And so anyways, when we're getting ready to sell out, he says, look, take your time selling out, sell them, and try to keep these horses. He said, that's the smartest thing for you to do, okay? And so that's what I did. I handpicked and tried to sell them and do that. Chad Bashaw, I had a relationship with him. He sent a lot of people my way. And Chad Bashaw is the reason Jenny and I are in Texas today. And so I sold those horses, and I come back in 2011, and I ended up third and fourth both at the Futurity, and that was huge.
We kept crossing paths and knew the same people. And Michael had a lot of success at Daryl's before he went to work at Rose Valley with Gary Rosenbach. So Michael and I have always been friends. I had a couple ranches in Oklahoma, and a facility there. Kind of evolved in over the years on. Michael and I looked at deals, so we started not only a relationship that we've already previously had, we started doing business dealings together.
I guess we had called contractors, and we was going to build our barn back there. Mm-hmm. And Chad Bashaw called me and said, hey, I got a guy coming to buy some horses. And I said, Chad, I really need him to leave something here if he's going to come look at my best 3-year-olds. And we still had Yada Cat at the time. I said, I need him to leave. He said, well, talk to him. I think he will leave one. So they called me on the phone, and he had a trainer. It was Gary Rosenbach, the guy I ended up working for. He had a trainer at that time. And so he sent him up there, and the deal was that he picked the best 2 3-year-olds, and he was going to leave one with me and then take the other 2. I said, okay, I'll do that, whatever I got to do. And Chad also was so good. He sent other customers to me. We had a really good string of horses. Daryl and I had a really good string of horses at that time, buying some out of the sales and stuff like that. And so, long story short, Gary bought one of those horses, and his trainer took the best one and took the Yada Cat and took them back here to Texas. And so, at that year, I ended up, third and fourth, and one of them was Gary's horse. And that was the first time he ever made the Futurity finals, and he was very happy, and I was happy, and it was fun. And the other one was for Mr. James Hooper, which is huge in the NCHA, and been great. We love that guy. And so that was in December of 2011. And so we're trying to get everything ready to build our barn. And I get a phone call from Gary late part of January or 1st of February. He said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming to work for me?" I said, "No." I said, I'm gonna build a big barn, and we're gonna go back home." He said, "Okay." He goes, "So there's no way that I could get you?" I said, "Man, it'd be a lot of money, you know?" And he said, "Well, what would that be?" And I said, "Well, I got to talk to my wife. I can't just move her to Texas, because I moved her from our place to Daryl Rodrock's to down here. She's living in this house, living in that house, and never complaining." Okay, maybe once, but no, never complaining. I talked to Jenny, and she said, "Well, if you think so." And I said, "Well, I think so." And so I called him back, told him the number. He goes, "I can't pay that. That ain't gonna work." And says, "All right, thank you." Hangs up on me. Next morning, early that next morning, I get a phone call. Said, "Hey, when can you be at Texas?" And I'm like, "Well, I probably any time, you know." He goes, "Okay, I'm gonna have my secretary book some flights." So we end up coming down here. Long story short, we ended up going to work for him, and we worked for him for 10, 11 years, you know, and it's great. I love him. We love him. He's
like family.
He's got horses still here today with my son, supporting my son. Like he's done so much for us. And so that time we moved down here, and we don't build the big barn up there or anything. And so I'm down here about 2 years, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to sell my place. If I move back to Missouri, I'm gonna be divorced and kidless, because nobody's moving back with me. And so anyways, we end up pricing our place and end up selling it, full price offer. They take everything on our ranch, the tractors, the troughs, the cows. The only thing they didn't take is the cows. So we end up 1031 in that land down here, and we buy 3 parcels, and then we sell that and end up trading for this place. And Gary and I bought this place in the thoughts of we was going to subdivide it and make a big bunch of money. And then Gary's back gets to hurting, and he puts the ranch up for sale, and we don't really realize, but it sells like for a lot of money, you know, and we're like, oh shoot. So anyways, he got me a deal when he sold it that I could stay there for a little while. And then so he ended up letting me have this for what we just bought on it, which was like, he's been so good to us. I mean, he's done so much to help us get to where we're at today. Business-wise, guided me, just talking, just wisdom, a lot of wisdom. And so being around all them guys has sure helped me as far as the business fact of it, just listening to the wisdom that they have to give out. And so we build this place in 21, start constructing it. And so we've been here almost 2 years. We had to clean it up because it was all woods. And so one thing led to another, and that's how we end up getting the ranch, is small pieces or whatever. And we would invest. When we sold the ranch, we bought a bunch of apartments here, and had the apartments and traded some land. And that's trading land has really helped me in getting this place.
Since that time, I started gradually moving some horses to Michael down in Weatherford, and I ended up falling. I built a new home, little ranch over in Silverado, and so I'm pretty much here full time now. I travel back and forth, but the relationships with Michael and I basically started some land real estate partnerships, and then we started building some convenience stores. We built the one there in Brock, Texas called Eagle's Nest. We've evolved our relationship, so I'm actually working with him more on the business side than enjoying my horses. We're trying to find that balance. So
I feel like he's let loose a little bit now. Like he has his hands in all kinds of other stuff now. So like from, let's say 5 o'clock until noon, he's hands-on, all game, all cutting horses. Like it's like, don't answer his phone, it's business here. And then after that, then like you can't get a hold of him. It's like for us, like if there's something goes wrong here, I'm like, all right, call Michael, he doesn't answer. It's like I gotta figure out. And I feel like it's helped me so much as a young trainer to take care of a lot of the customers in that aspect, because he's let me do it. You know what I mean? He's had confidence in letting me have the right call, and for I can make the right decision to lead them in the path that he would have, you know? And like when he worked at Rose Valley for 10 years, it was Michael and Gary Rosenbach. Like it was a great combination between them two because they were always on the same page, you know? So it's been a cool transition from one person to 40, 50 people that we have to deal with every day.
It's surreal. I mean, we had this conversation a lot that we never seen ourselves in this position. 2 kids from Summersville, and with that being said, Summersville was a very great start for both of us. Obviously, we met there, and I think that it's like chapters in a book. It's been like our chapter, and then as the years have gone on, God's put different people in our lives to help us get to this part. Obviously, Mr. Joe and Mr. George and different ones, and Mr. Darrell and Mr. Gary, and then Michael's mama Juanita has played a huge role. Michael's grandfather, Michael's daddy, my parents.
He's always worked for somebody, and it was never his own deal. That now he is like, I feel like, can do anything he wants. Like, he's letting all of us have so much more opportunity, the people here. He's very, very into that. He wants the people that work under him, like Davide, Jimmy, Trevor Bullock in the past, Nate Lansford, all those people, to give him as much as they can. Like, he's always a giving person. So that's the biggest thing about Michael is, I think, is he's always wanting other people in the spotlight versus himself. He hates working alone. So like this place, obviously, what you've seen today, there's 30 people here every day. Like, that's what he loves. He loves like a group of people for him to have fun, to come and watch, ride their own horses, and people to enjoy the sport, I feel like.
So it's pretty good. Michael is a very good teacher because I think he learned the mechanics more than the feeling before. So he breaks every turn, every situation, he breaks it down to the mechanic of it. And if he can, there's Lance who sees it from a different perspective, or there's Jimmy, or there's another person. So being here, you're always, is a clinic 24/7. We pick on each other, we feed from each other, we switch horses. It works. It doesn't work as a one person and everybody behind, it works like as a team. So that's why I like it.
Just pulling to drive, and like your memories just start flooding and everything, and to see the opportunities that your kids, because I mean, just like Michael's mom and dad, and just like my parents, they wanted more for him. My parents wanted more for me. We want more for Lance and Lane, you know? And looking back, I know that this spot is where we're supposed to be to help them achieve their goals now. It's special.
Well, she is very correct about the part of pinching yourself when you drive in, because I always fought the part of being in Texas, honestly. I always thought of myself to be like Austin Shepherd and where Lloyd Cox was. That's two of the people that I want to be different. I'll be up here, but I guess God chose other plans for different reasons. And you're not supposed to make me cry again, but you always think, man, I'd love to have that, but you just don't know how it's going to get there. And I look back and I think, how in the world? Just huge blessings, you know what I mean? So I don't really know a good answer for that question. That's probably one of the questions you got me stumped with, besides the only thing I can say is it's my dream place, our dream place, I would think, because I told her when I moved her to this house and bought this place, and Gary, like I said, Gary was a huge part of it, that I would never move her again. And that's the point of the story. When Lane called me that day when we got an offer on it, and he said, Dad, are you crazy? You know what I mean? It's going against all you ever taught me. Well, back to the story about her giving up everything she gave up to help me get where I'm at today, in this place. I don't know what else to say besides it's my dream place.
And I always tell him, I'm never going to realize where you come from. You can always tell somebody where you come from and what you do and what struggles you had growing up. He always made it where I didn't have those struggles. So it's hard for me to wrap my head around it. I do know where I was raised. It's totally different than Weatherford. Like, there's no comparison. We had a Ranger and I drove around as a little kid. I could do whatever I want and there was no one around. If I wanted to go get a horse, I'd go ride a horse. If I wanted to do anything, like, it was more country. Like, it wasn't as pristine as where we're at now, but I feel like it's still the same roots. That's what I like about it. That's what I think he wanted, a big piece of property of his own, for it could still have the roots of Missouri, where he's from, where we're from, but still in the area of the cutting capital of the world. So I think it's a perfect location where we're at, because there's not a lot of people around, but it's easy to get to. Like, Silverado is a mile up the road, so it's a very easy place for a lot of people to come and enjoy and have that same feeling where you're not in the city or in a big populated place, but you also have land to go enjoy your horses. I think that's the biggest thing that I like about it.
I gotta tell one more real emotional thing. In 2009, Jenny and I have provided a house or a place for my mom and dad to live for, I think we added it up and it was for over 15 years, I think, that we had a house for them. In 2009, I won $179,000 on Yacht-A-Cat. That was the biggest check I've ever gotten, from Daryl. Daryl wrote me that check. And I was already on salary, and I was making very good money at that time. Jenny and I still had our ranch, and we had up to, how many mama cows did we have? 250 or 300 mama cows. We kept putting land together down there from our winnings, and when we'd sell a horse, we'd buy a horse and either fix it or train it and sell it and all that. So we kept piecing land together. Now, don't take this wrong, the first piece of ground we bought was $500 an acre. So it was very cheap land. And so we worked hard at cleaning it up and all this. And so I called my dad's bank. Mom and dad was living on our place in a trailer house. And I asked Jenny if it would be okay. And we called the bank, and Dad had 2 little small loans there. It was for the trailer house and one of the trucks or vehicles or something.
Yeah.
And he said, man, I'm not supposed to do this, but I know you guys and everything. So I went in and paid that off. And I got the yellow copy when you pay something off that says paid off. And so we wrap it up in a Christmas gift just with that paper. And I handed it to Dad, and I wanted him to open it. And he's opening it, and he opens it up, and he starts crying so hard. He just hands it to Mom, and he just starts crying so hard. I'll never forget it. And so when you say, what does NCHA mean to you? That's pretty much it. When you can take a check and pay your mother and father's trailer house and a little small car off, whatever there was, $13,000 and $3,000, I don't even remember the number. But when you can do that, that's life-changing. So when somebody says, what does NCHA mean to you, or what has it done to you? It's changed our lives.
100%.
It's totally, the horse in NCHA has changed our life. Our whole life. And so, again, I'm sorry. It's been a long time coming to give this story. It's still today, as you can tell, super emotional for me to give this, because there's spots that still hurts, and a lot of spots in the growing up side, or what she had to do, or what I had to do, and all that.
There's nothing quite like the NCHA. Everybody in this association is family oriented. It doesn't matter if you're an average Joe cowboy or if you're a billionaire cowboy. When you go to a weekend show or a big show, it doesn't matter. Everybody's rooting for one another. They all try to help one another. And it's just a unique organization on the cores on. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are. We're all trying to help one another. We're all rooting for everybody having a good run or a good horse. People don't realize how great of an organization the NCHA is on core values, core family, and all walks of life. It does not matter. And so my family's getting more and more involved in it now. My wife, Bonnie, and I, we're showing more, and now my kids are kind of coming up the ranks, buying more horses through Michael.
Growing up in the NCHA is awesome. I loved it. There's a lot of father figures in the sport that isn't your dad. A lot of people that take you under your wing, that want to help you and put you in the right positions for you can learn in life. That's probably my favorite part about growing up in the sport. You have so many connections in so many different areas. If you want to be an actress, like, you have people in that industry. We have people in every part of the world that can get you wherever you want to be.
NCHA itself has done a lot for our family. Just our whole world wraps around NCHA and the cutting, but our relationships with our friends and family. Even his business deals that he does is usually they come from somebody that's showed cutting horses, or somebody that rides cutting horses. And what's actually really interesting to me is the NCHA is a hobby for a lot of the businessmen. So they didn't actually make their money in the NCHA, but it's their hobby that they enjoy doing. So they all connect. So you see all kinds of different businesses, and people come from so many different parts of the world, and all have a sport that they enjoy as entertainment. So when you say what it has done for my family, once again, you can't even put it into words because, I mean, that's how we live our life. I mean, NCHA, I don't even know. I mean, it's crazy how much it's impacted us.
I truly feel like without relationships, I wouldn't have this ranch inside Silverado. All the way from Kenneth Gallion owning that place that I was there, from people helping me. I wouldn't have the gas stations without having a relationship. What he was talking about, other businesses. Same way with our other businesses. There's no way I would have and be into those things without the relationship. Because I have three different customers that are business partners. You know what I mean? And so without the NCHA pulling that, I wouldn't have those other businesses with them. Without NCHA being the hub that pulls all the relationships together, that bonds as another family within itself. That's the way I feel about that. And I feel like anybody in the NCHA, for some reason, comes together as families. I don't know if it's the horse or what it is that pulls everybody together,